Perhaps it was a political compromise that these Franciscans were given a virtual veto over the individual land grants. Many applicants of mixed blood were men retiring from service in the Spanish Army. Most such requests were vetoed. During the first 30 years of the land grant system, only 24 mixed-blooded applicants were approved, and all of these were married to neophytes, pure-blooded Indian women who had been raised and educated in the church's convent system. There was also a history of friction between the hierarchy of the church and the military. The friars sometimes refused to minister to the presidios, manned by soldiers of mixed blood. A military governor wrote angrily to Father President Serra, quote, "May God forgive your reverence for the Christian doctrine which the children at the presidio are not learning, and for the education they are not receiving." By 1808, after 289 years of colonial rule, New Spain had a population of 6 million people. It had a sophisticated infrastructure, particularly around a very cultured Mexico City, and it had a complex government, headed by the Viceroy, run by Spanish-born executives, but in most ways controlled by the King of Spain, and very much influenced by the hierarchy of the clergy. The life of the elite class was indeed comfortable.
There was a lot of native labor there to do it for you, and these people were not used to really working hard, the ricos, or the rich class. They were a lot of young men who just didn't believe in working. They just came over to get seek their fortunes.
As for the church itself, a rigid system of fees for baptisms, marriages, and funerals, as well as gifts from the king and upper-class laymen, made it wealthy, owning half of the real estate and capital in the country. The clergy enjoyed numerous legal privileges. They were subject only to church courts, which also had jurisdiction over many civil matters. As its wealth and power increased, its diligence declined. Educational efforts were drastically reduced. 90% of the population remained totally illiterate. But here it's important to observe that within the clergy, there were some liberal reform-minded thinkers who had been very much influenced by the American Revolution. Admittedly, they were at the low echelons of the church among the parish priests, but their views would find a following, and their influence would be felt. It is reasonable to say that the first 25 years of Mexican-American history in Arizona, from 1853 to 1877, saw race relations that were relatively better than what would come later. And there are understandable reasons. The population, both Anglo and Hispanic, was small. Those with Mexican roots outnumbered the Anglos. There was a well-established cultural base, identifiable community leadership, civic participation, and some long-standing businesses, especially in Tucson. And perhaps most important, they were all in the same boat. They shared the ongoing danger of hostile Apaches and the ongoing frustration of struggling to convince the government to make Arizona a territory of the United States. Congress had rejected such proposals at least 10 times, so in 1860, a group of prominent Mexican Americans, including such names as Ochoa, Aguirre, Chavez, and Garcia, joined with some equally prominent Anglos, held a convention, wrote a constitution, and declared this the provisional territory of Arizona. Nobody in Washington took it very seriously, but it made the point that these rugged frontier people viewed themselves as Americans and wanted to be recognized as such.
The Aztec Indians of ancient Mexico used to woo their gods with music and dance, and the custom continues. Whenever there's a fiesta or celebration in Arizona, you're bound to find a colorful display of Mexican folk dances. They're performed by groups such as Ballet Folklorico, helping to keep alive a beautiful tradition.
The good news was that Jose Maria Redondo of Yuma was overwhelmingly elected to the first Arizona Territorial House of Representatives in 1864. The bad news was that he couldn't take office. He'd forgotten to file the papers to become a U.S. citizen. Later, he did serve several terms in the legislature and was the mayor of Yuma. Mariano Guadalupe Samanigo came to Tucson in 1864, having graduated from St. Louis University. He built successful cattle and freighting businesses, served 4 terms in the legislature, and was an early advocate of a state university. Later, Samaniego was one of the first members of the university's board of regents. Anglo, Arizona, the Mexican-American presence may have added to the flavor and charm of the region, but was mostly invited to stay out of sight. And the methods of enforcement took many forms. Housing patterns are an obvious example, as Adam Diaz, who later served on the Phoenix City Council, remembers.
North of Van Buren was impossible to buy anything for us because of the fact that there was a deed restriction. All deeds had a restriction, and as I say, as a matter of fact, our experience was that we tried to buy a house on 25th Street and Monte Vista, and we moved in, very happy to move in, and then a delegation of the neighbors came in and they informed us that we could live there, that it was a no-no.
There were virtually no civil rights laws. One's ability to gain entry to establishments such as restaurants was very much subject to a proprietor's whims.
2 of us went to the front door and tried to get in and order a hamburger, but they said, no, you can't buy a hamburger, you'll have to go to the alley. Go to the kitchen, and the chef will be very happy to serve you whatever you want. And there's nothing else to do. We wanted a hamburger, so we went and bought our hamburgers, and we had to eat our hamburger right out in the alley.
If there was one single event that served as a positive indication of what was possible to achieve, it was the election in 1974 of Raul Castro as governor of the state of Arizona. Born in Mexico in poverty as one of 13 children, became a naturalized citizen, worked his way through college and law school, won election as county attorney and Superior Court judge, twice selected as a U.S. ambassador, and elected governor.
A great sense of pride, really, of my heritage, and a great sense of pride that in Arizona this could be accomplished and could be done. I had been probably the first county attorney in Arizona, the first Superior Court judge, I believe, and certainly the first governor and the first ambassador from Arizona of Hispanic heritage. So it gave me a great sense of responsibility. In other words, the standard was higher for me than somebody else. If somebody goes off, okay. But if Raul creates some damage somewhere down the line, then the standard was a little higher for me. So the responsibility was there.